Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today we'll be reviewing Malignant. So Malignant is the newest film from the horror genius James Wan. It premiered on HBO Max in theaters. And I think it's one of the most creative horror movies that I've seen in the past couple years.
Yeah, I had no idea it was going to turn out the way it does. And it was just super surprising and a different feature for a horror film.
Yeah, so we're going to get into a little bit of spoilers in this one. The movie's been out for a couple weeks now, so I feel like it's okay to talk about kind of the big twist, because that's the big draw for this movie, in my opinion. Because
Yeah.
the first two acts, I was like, how's this going to work? It's kind of cool, but like I don't understand how it's going to come together. And it comes together in such a satisfying and kind of subversive way. Like you go into it and you kind of think you know what's happening. Like I thought I knew, okay, it's going to be this kind of film, and it turns into a completely different movie.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, the third act's probably my favorite out of, the entire movie, but leading up to what happens, you're just questioning the whole time. I'm wondering, how is this movie going to end?
Yeah.
What is going to happen here? Where are these missing puzzle pieces that I'm trying to figure out throughout the whole film? And I find that so intriguing, and I feel like we don't see a lot of films like that.
Yeah. For the basic plot of the film, you have this woman, Madison, whose boyfriend or fiance husband dies very early on in the film, and she's kind of plagued by this serial killer. Like there's this serial killer that's going around and killing people involved in her life, and random doctors, and you have an early scene where you see kind of like a hospital, and like, how does that work into the rest of the story?
Yeah.
And it comes together so, in such, like I said, such a satisfying way. So I will jump into a little bit of spoilers here, because I feel like you can't talk about this movie really without talking about the big twist at the end. So you do realize at the end that it's kind of, you watch those horror movies where the main character's actually not understanding what's going on, and they're an unreliable narrator, and they're actually behind everything. It's that, but in such an interesting way. Like I said, so you find out by the end of the film that the main character was actually born with this cancerous tumor that was a life form.
Yes.
And it's named Gabriel. It was her brother that didn't attach from her body and was feeding off her life force. And then she doesn't know about this. She has no recollection of any of this happening. It's where you get the doctors that come into it. But the way that it plays out, and the cinematography and the choreography of having that creature come out of the back of her body and like take over her from reverse,
Yeah.
it's wild. Like, it's wild to watch.
It's super wild. And the third act is really where it like kicks up, and you're seeing this full like life force in the back of her, Gabriel, come out, and you see her body conforming to going backwards, and it's super crazy intense. And then the hair, it looked insane.
Well, yeah, well, the movie, first off, is very graphic.
Uh-huh.
It's a very gory movie. It takes me back to some of James Wan's earlier works in horror. But I do think that they worked it into the story in a way that it makes it very intense.
Yes.
Like, you could maybe watch this and think it looks a little silly, I think, if it didn't have the intensity that it has. It has some actually really good use of some, like, heavy metal guitar.
Yes.
Like, whenever it cuts to Gabriel, it gets so intense. And when Gabriel takes over, everything's so fast and furious, and it turns almost into, like, an action movie. And I really do think that blend of, like, this thriller serial killer story turning into, like, an over-the-top action horror I did not expect it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly what Brian said. The music in this movie is pretty awesome.
And even like the cinematography.
Yes.
Like it gets so tight and close when Gabriel is taking over, because they don't want you to kind of see what's happening.
James Wan always knows how to interestingly like do different camera shots that you don't normally see in a film. And it makes you feel uncomfortable when you're watching it.
Yeah, because it's something that he did in the Conjuring series, and he also did it in Insidious a lot, where you have kind of a still frame, and there's a character in the foreground, and there's just something's going to happen. And he does a good job of subverting it, because you think, oh, someone's going to jump out. But they always do. He does a great job of turning the camera in a certain angle and just getting you. Even when you know he's trying to get you, he still gets you.
Yes.
He does a lot of the over-the-top work, just kind of unsettling angles, like Noelle said. And you see it a lot in other films now. Really, his style is kind of taken off in horror. But I think he is a master at that.
Yes, I completely agree. So I'd give this movie a 7 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had no idea what it was going to be about. I was just excited that it was a James Wan film, because I love the first two Conjuring movies by him. I think they're like up there for horror for me. And I just loved everything about it. I don't know how to explain it there. I mean, yeah, some of the story in the beginning to me was a little too slow. That is why I'm giving it a 7 rating. The third act is when it definitely picks up for me. And that is where the most interesting part is, because there's this huge twist that I just did not see coming at all.
So I would actually give this movie an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, Noelle kind of said the first two acts are a little slower. I don't know if I was fully on board with it. I feel like it's kind of a generic serial killer movie. And then that shift really got me. I think the way they shifted the film from being that thriller serial killer film to a almost action-packed slasher, like making that hard cut when you find out what's happening, I think really helped the movie. And I think if you go back, like if I were to go back and watch it, I think knowing what I know and you watching the first 2 acts would make it a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, oh, well, this all adds up. Because I thought at the end it was one of those movies where you get to the last part and you're like, wow, if you piece it out, like this makes sense when he pushed her and he hit the back of the wall and like how it's feeding off of what's going on inside of her and her body and everything. It's really cool. Like it's a great use of writing in a way that, like I said, subverts expectations. So I think James Wan is one of the best directors today. I mean, he's made some great movies across tons of genres. Like he's great at horror, obviously, but he's been involved in other big blockbuster franchises. So I can't wait to see what he does next. I'm glad that he does little movies like this. Because sometimes you get so big, you're not going to do a little movie like that. It's a very small, self-contained film.
He did well with Aquaman, too.
That's what I mean. Like, he did, like, huge films like that. But then he also can do this, which I think appeals to some horror fans.
Yeah. So this sums up our review of Malignant. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of the film. What'd you think of it? How
does it rank with the other James Wan horror movies? I'm interested to see what people think, because I feel like it's kind of divided, because it's so strange. It's a strange movie.
It's super strange.
So if you think it's one thing, and it has that hard stop to the third act, I mean, I don't know. People might love it like me, or people could absolutely hate it.
Remember to like and subscribe. We always appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.